So I'm part of Youngo. I'm global focal point, and Youngo is the official youth constituency of the UNFCCC. What that means is it's basically the mandated mechanism for engagement of children and youth under the UNFCCC processes. We're not an organization, we're not an organization, but we're a mandated mechanism, which means we're basically a space for youth to engage. We're a entirely volunteer-based network of youth from close to about 10,000 young people from 160 plus countries that form our membership. We have close to 1,000 plus youth-led organizations that are part of the membership. So it's a huge network of volunteers, all focused on doing different things, right from grassroots climate action to engaging in spaces like this in international policy processes, with a focus, of course, at the UNFCCC, but also beyond. So Youngo works in ensuring that the voices of children and youth are a part of the policy processes, are a part of the international processes when the UNFCCC is in process, which means when the UN is making decisions, when countries come together under the UNFCCC to make decisions on international climate processes, it is decisions that affect the future of children and youth today. And we need to be at the decision-making tables, making these decisions for ourselves, which is why, since the UNFCCC is a party-driven process, which means decisions are made by parties or countries, we're the official mode of mechanism for civil society, for young people, anyone under the age of 35, to ensure that even though we're not making the decisions, our voices are a part of the process and are streamlined as part of the UNFCCC negotiation space. So the Global Youth Statement was formalized at the 16th Conference of Youth, in short known as COP26. As the name suggests, this was the 16th time this Conference of Youth is taking place. Every year it takes place before the COP happens in the city of the COP. So this time, of course, it was in Glasgow from October 28th to the 31st. And the outcome of this conference, which was a cumulation of voices of young people from across the world through something known as local conferences of youth that took place a few months before, few regional conferences of youth, and a virtual conference of youth. All of this came together to formulate a global youth statement. This global youth statement is 77 pages long and is formulated by voices of 40,000 young people from 140 countries from across the world through this consultation process that we've been doing for months in the lead up to COP16. This was finalized at COP16 and has been presented to the UNFCCC Executive Secretary, to the COP President, to the First Minister of Scotland, and many others. Sure. This morning we presented the Global Youth Statement, like mentioned, to the UNFCCC Executive Secretary, to the COP President, as well as the First Minister of Scotland, also to the high-level champion from the UK, Nigel Topping, as well as Archie Young, who's the lead negotiator from the UK. And we had a very frank discussion and open discussion with them, where they actually took into consideration the views, the outcomes of the Global Youth Statement, and are going to ensure on how they can try and bring this into the UNFCCC process, how they're going to champion it for us, because we're still not at the tables making these decisions for ourselves. So it was an interesting conversation, and it was really good to see them not just talk about the work that they're doing, but also talk about how they're really going to become leaders and champion this Global Youth Statement on behalf of the global youth. I think this really has to come bottom up. Even countries have to realize that the voices of young people need to be taken seriously. We can't just have youth that we cherry pick and put either on a delegation, either on a speaking spot, just to tick boxes of, okay, youth done, women done, indigenous done. But we do have to realize that this is a lot more beyond that. It needs to come through independent youth-led mechanisms, whatever that might be. Under the UNFCCC, it's Youngo, but outside it can be anything else. And it has to come through youth-led spaces that work with other young people, whether it's at the national level, international level, local level, and then ensure that you have delegates as part of your country delegation who are not just there to shadow or print and do other stuff for the delegation, but who can be a part of negotiations. Of course, they might need a learning curve, they will need capacity building, but all of that needs to be provided, the training needs to be provided, the finance needs to be provided to these youth who come as part of the delegation in order to be able to sit at the table and delegate and do the negotiations on behalf of their country. And I think what we also need to realize is to give them the autonomy to make the delegations, to make the decisions as part in consultation with other young people from their country, and not just what the position of the ruling party is. And this in itself is very important. One, to give them the voice, to give them the capacity, give them the space, but the second, to let them use this voice as they want by themselves, and not just have them take the position of the ruling party or of whatever that might be, because sometimes youth might feel differently. And I think it's important to listen to these young people and actually take this into consideration if we really want to meaningfully work with youth. Well, it wasn't just me. There was a team of hundreds of people who have worked really hard. There was a small team that has been working for weeks, not sleeping nights before the Conference of Youth to pull this together. They've been reading inputs for months and months when these global youth statements, when the youth statements were coming in from the local conferences of youth, when the national statements were coming in. Also, when we did an open consultation process, any single young person could just fill in the form and input what they wanted to. So it was a lot of work. There were hundreds of volunteers that put in together. So if you look at the global youth statement, in every section, the volunteers are acknowledged in the work that they've been doing. So for example, this is energy, and you can see the names of the youth that have worked on this particular section. So they've been reading all the inputs that have come in. They've been putting this together, consolidating it, trying to find common ground. So it's not been easy, and it's been a huge amount of task to work on volunteer basis for these young people who have side jobs, who have other day jobs, who are studying or doing whatever else, to still put this together and make this happen in the incredibly short time that we've had. So there are multiple different categories. We've of course gone right from the UNFCCC negotiations like adaptation, mitigation, loss and damage, finance, ACE, which is Action for Climate Empowerment, to cross-cutting topics like human rights, gender, indigenous peoples, so on and so forth. So there has been a lot of different topics covered. The key messages that we presented this morning were on finance, were on transport, local cities, was on adaptation, loss and damage, was on gender, was on inclusivity, and on meaningful empowerment of youth. So we consolidated the key messages that we really thought should be highlighted. Technology was also one of them. So there were 6 different key messages that were highlighted out of this, and most of them can feed directly into the UNFCCC process, which is the speciality that as Youngo that we have, because we're a constituency of the UNFCCC, because we're a part of that process as a mandated mechanism, we can make these demands into the process, whether it's through interventions, which is speaking slots that Youngo might receive, where Youngo members might be speaking, but also through events like we did this morning on Youth Day, where we actually presented this in a proper presentation on a panel with the 6 young people talking about what was presented, and then have the high level or the keynote listeners actually respond to this and champion and tell us how they're going to take this forward. So it's done in multiple mechanisms. We're also just going around with this at the World Leaders Summit. We created a one-pager, which was just a paragraph and a QR code that you scan, and you can get the 77 pages. So we've gone to world leaders, we've given them this one-pager and told them to read it, told them to download it and see what they can do to make this happen at their own capacity, but also internationally. So we're doing what we can to disseminate it. It's now in their hands to take this forward and implement everything that we have asked for. So it's been different. As focal point, I haven't been able to sit in the negotiation rooms because I've been doing a lot of the background coordination work, but we have working group members who are part of the negotiations who are attending. And for the very first time, we've actually managed to get additional close to 100 badges for young people from across the world, mainly Global South. I think 80% of them are Global South youth, and with a little bit of funding as well for some, to be able to come to COP26. So this has been the largest ever Youngo delegation that we've ever had, which in itself is a huge task. It's been sleepless nights for us to make this happen. But of course, due to COVID constraints, each constituency has been given minimum 1 seat in each room, which is not enough when you have 100 young people. There are 6 different negotiations going on at one time, so it's 6 people. Sometimes if there is additional space in the room, more youth, or it's open for observers to attend, and more young people can enter the room after the first 10 minutes. So this has been a learning process where even the presidency, even the UNFCCC secretariat is learning, is figuring out how to make this happen. So in the true sense of, are we in the rooms? Not entirely yet. Some of us are, but this is also how Youngo is structuring, how we're functioning ourselves, where we're ensuring that working groups are following the negotiations. They have somebody or the other in the room at some point of time, So, and then they have a debrief meeting every evening. So as a constituency, we have a morning coordination meeting and an evening debrief meeting to ensure that we're up to speed, everyone is aware of what's going on, whether they're in the rooms or not. So it's not the best situation, and we have brought this to the attention of the concerned people, and they're trying to work out on it, but we're in the pandemic and we do have restrictions to follow. So we're doing what we can around that to ensure that youth really are a part of this table, they're really in the rooms and their voices can be heard. Climate education is very close to my heart. I work on climate education back home in India. And for me, this started when I have a master's in environmental studies, and when I came to my first COP in 2015, I had a master's degree, so I had this education, so to say. But the world of the UNFCCC is an absolute world of itself, and I had no clue what was going on. I was completely lost. And as I joined Youngo, as I engaged a little bit more, I did a lot of self-study by myself to understand what the process was, what the language was, everything from what is CTCN, PCCB, ACE. Nobody understands these things if you're not part of the process. And now I can speak easily about these things, but this wasn't the case 5 or 6 years ago. So I did a lot of the self-study, and the first things that came to my mind was, having the formal education needed, I still had to struggle a lot to come up to speed on what happens internationally. And then when you talk about other young people who don't have access to these, forget the negotiation space, who don't have access to even climate education in general, who don't know what's going on outside, it's superbly hard for them to take action, for them to even be a part of the process and understand why this is important. And back in 2015, 2016, the youth climate movement was really still growing in India. It wasn't this huge as it is now, and it's incredible to see how many young people are now active and engaged. But at that point, it wasn't that big, and this was my main motivation to get into climate education. So I definitely think education is a key aspect to take action. It's not enough, but it is the first step towards action, because if you're not aware, if you're not educated, you're never going to know what the outside world is like, so you're not going to take action. So when I went to my first COP, like I mentioned, I didn't know anything, and it was my first international conference. I was too afraid to speak to anyone as well, so I was very intimidated. And I was there for 1 week, and I said, okay, it was a good week, but this is the end of it. But the good thing it did was I was working in a corporate, and I decided to quit my job, and I started volunteering for a while. And through this, I went the next time with a youth delegation, and I think this was the good thing, where I could speak with other people. I met other people close to my age, and it sort of broke the ice. It made, I made friends in this space, and this is how I got engaged in Youngo. I did hear about Youngo even the year before in 2015, but I was just too afraid to even ask what it was. So this was a good induction, and this slowly helped me learn. So a lot of the times I was still grappling in the dark. It took me, even today, I still feel like every time I go to a COP, I feel like I learn a little bit more, or to the intercession, which is the smaller negotiations that happens in the summer every year. So it's a learning process every single year. But there has been change, of course. There has been, even within Youngo, the youth space is so dynamic. The way we engage ourselves, it has really grown from 2016 to what it is today. The number of youth involved has grown. The passion was always there, but just it's becoming more apparent to more young people that this is a space that we really care about, and this is a space that we want our voices to be heard. So even within the constituency, we've really had to restructure, we've really had to rethink on how we engage ourselves, get a little bit more organized. We're a flat structure, so we're a bottom-up structure where we don't have someone taking the decisions for everyone in the constituency, and which sometimes lead to a lot of different ideas, different things, and you need to structure them, you need to organize them in a certain manner. So there has been a lot of different activities that even the constituency that we've been doing ourselves to ensure that we're changing with the times, learning with the times, but also keeping ourselves up to date and ensuring that we are at least as meaningful and as inclusive as we can be. So it's been a process throughout, whether it's internally but also in the UN. They're now really thinking, at least mentioning youth and climate are the biggest buzzwords that I've heard in the past couple of years. So definitely the attention on young people is a lot more. They're wanting, or at least say they want to listen to us. But in today's session, they really did, and they did listen to us. They did speak to our questions, and they did not go off track. So I think this in itself is a big step towards commitment. It's a big step towards saying, okay, we're going to try and walk the talk. But of course, what action really looks like, it's up to the countries, it's up to the negotiators, and we will have to wait to see what end of COP26 looks like. But I think as of today, I still feel that we have been heard and our voices have been at least listened to. How much they act upon, we still need to know. I think my key learnings, mainly for me personally, one has been just, it's a personality development on right from being an intimidated shy kid, not being able to speak to someone, to being able to do this conversation today in itself is a change. But learning the process, learning the technicalities, the jargon of the UNFCCC, it's a whole world in itself, which has been a learning curve. But also the community that we've made, the friends. I could go to any country in the world, or almost any country in the world, and I might know a young person there. And this is the beauty of what Youngo is. It gives you a family away from home. It gives you a space where you meet like-minded people, where you meet other members from the community who you would otherwise not meet outside of this space, who I would never have known had I not engaged in this international community. So it's a lot of personal growth, it's a lot of learnings, it teaches you how to speak, it teaches you how to negotiate, so to say, because at every step of the way you do realize you have to negotiate for what you want, whether it is internally, whether it's external, whether it's with the UN, whether it's with anyone else. So it really teaches you a lot of different things. It builds your personality in a certain manner. It makes you think internationally. It also makes you a lot more aware of cultures. It makes you a lot more aware of, being respectful of different cultures, of language. So it's a whole lot of different learning processes. And I think it's definitely been extremely great and extremely rewarding to be a part of the process. No, for sure. So there are 9 different constituencies. Youngo is one of them. It's for youth. But there are 8 other constituencies. There's women and gender, there's indigenous peoples, farmers, research institutes, trade unions, local governments, municipal authorities, and businesses. So there are 9 different constituencies, and we've been working closely over the past 2 years together with the constituency focal points. We've had regular meetings every few weeks, every few months. We also have position statements together sometimes, especially in the lead up to COP. There's been an immense amount of collaboration between the constituencies on what engagement of observers should look like, on how we want to participate, and it's been a learning process, especially for my co-focal point and myself. It's been a great learning process because some of them have been focal points for years, some of them have been part of the process since COP1, and then have been focal points for 10 years and 12 years. So the amount of experience that we get from the other constituencies is a lot. So it's definitely been a learning process for us. And while everyone still works in their own individual spheres, own individual demands, individual action, there has been a lot of collaboration. I think this has also been a process because for the 2 years now that we've been focal points, it's usually a 1-year mandate, but because of the pandemic it's increased. It has given us the chance to build relationships. Even though it's been virtual, it's given us the chance, it's given us the time to connect with one another, to actually deep dive and think about, is how would we want to engage? How does observer engagement or civil society engagement look like? And while there is a lot we still have to better, there's a lot we still need to do. At least amongst the constituencies, there is communication, there is coordination to a certain extent, and we do try to work together as much as we can. Yeah, I mean, in the pandemic, I think the biggest thing is where I think youth have realized that, the climate crisis is not going to stop just because of the pandemic, and we've seen it. Emissions drop, but they've gone up, they've peaked up again. So it's not the solution. We've really seen the urgency. We've seen so many extreme weather events happen in the past couple of years across the world, not just in certain regions, across the world. And I think to keep youth motivated was not the biggest problem. We can see the issues, we know that this is a problem, and the motivation level has still remained. And with Youngo, since we anyways only meet in person twice a year, but that's at the intersession and at the COP, everyone is working from across the world remotely, so we've been used to remote working, so it wasn't a huge change for us. Of course, we didn't meet for 2 years, but other than that, a lot of new members joined in, so a lot of them we've been meeting for the very first time now at COP, and we've been working for them for 2 years, and it's been amazing to actually finally see someone, in not on a screen, but actually in front of you, and the efficiency level is extremely different as well. But I think that the issue was not motivation, the issue was just how do you coordinate, how do you ensure that we actually are keeping the pressure on in the time where there is no in-person negotiation happening. We did have negotiations virtually in June this year, but it wasn't a mandated, it wasn't an official negotiation where no decisions were taken. They've postponed the decisions to COP. So the issue was, how do you keep the pressure on? How do you ensure that our voices are still a part of the process and our demands are still being heard despite having no meetings, no negotiations, no decisions being made for 2 years now? So there were different kinds of challenges, different kinds of approaches on how youth should be engaged, how civil society should be engaged. So it's not been a very smooth struggle, it's not been a very smooth process. It has been a little bit of struggle, but I think we are where we are, and we're working now together with the Secretariat of the UNFCCC and the COP26 team to do the best that we can now during the COP to ensure that it is meaningful as much as we can. So we will have 2 new focal points for Youngo that will be elected at COP. That's our process. Focal points are always elected at a COP, and it's usually a 1-year mandate. They will start in January until December. So Maikler and myself, we started in January 2020. We're supposed to finish at COP26 last year, but now because of the COP postponed, we've had the longest mandate ever. We've had a 2-year mandate. And what I do after that, I really don't know. I think I'm going to have a huge void in my life because I'm constantly right now, especially in the past month or so, and now during COP, it's been a flood of emails. I have messages every 5 seconds. My phone is buzzing. I have emails coming in, close to 150 emails every single day. And this is all going to stop once COP is over. Everyone is going to take a breather and take a deep breath. So I think for a while I'm just going to catch up on some sleep, catch up on sanity, speak to my family. I haven't spoken to them in weeks now. So that's the first step. And then I'm going to go back and rework on my climate education program. I do a program with a few young people on focusing on climate education for youth, and I'm working with a few other young women back at home. So I'm going to strengthen that a little bit, and I'm also doing a few part-time consultancies, which probably might lead to a little more meaningful work than what I've been able to contribute now. But I'm looking forward to first some downtime and then start rethinking on what I want to do, reprioritize, because for 2 years I've only focused on Youngo and prioritized that. So now I really need to rethink what I want to do in life. For the young youth who are here in person, of course, there is going to be a change when you're before COP and after COP, because no matter, we've done capacity building sessions in Youngo before. We've done 4 capacity building sessions, 3 virtual and 1 at the Conference of Youth. And no matter how much you build capacity of anyone, actually, not just youth, of anyone, when you come to the COP, it's very different, and the whole feeling is it's a little overwhelming. So for any individual, if this is their first COP, it's definitely going to be a huge before COP and a post COP experience. But I think this is just where the learning curve is, where you have a really steep learning curve if you're engaging. It's because of everything that the language, the text, the whole thing is different. So the more you engage, the more you learn. Initially, it's a steep learning curve, and hopefully a lot of them will stick around. Hopefully a lot of them will continue to be engaged and not be overwhelmed and not leave the process after this, not leave Youngo. So we hope for them to stick around and to continue, because I could be where I am today because I stuck around. I was lost, I was overwhelmed, but I stuck around, and the community itself helped me learn. And I hope we can provide that space to all the youth that are new, that have joined in now. Some have, of course, been in Glasgow, but there are plenty who've joined in and are unable to be at COP. But we hope we're able to, meaningfully engage them despite them being here post-COP, go back, debrief with the constituency, debrief on lessons learned, on what can we do better, and how can we, even within the constituency, structure ourselves better for the next COP and the next Conference of Youth. So there is a lot of thinking to be done. There will definitely be a pre-COP and post-COP phase, and I really hope that post-COP leads to a lot of deep dive and thinking and restructuring and making the space more inclusive, better and meaningful for youth. So for any young person, we're open to anyone under the age of 35. If you want to become a Youngo member, it's a very simple sign-up form. There's a Google form, and the link you can put up as well. So it takes 5 minutes to fill in the Google form, and then you can sign. So that is the only criteria to sign up. And then we have multiple working groups. We have close to 20 working groups. So I'd encourage anyone to join a working group of their choice. You can, of course, join more than one, but pick at least one that you're really passionate about. Join the working group, come to meetings, virtual meetings, of course, post-COP, and engage and just start from the process a little bottom up and see what you like, find your foothold. You can always change, you're not stuck in one working group for life, so you can move across. If you feel that there is a working group that is not represented, we have close to 20, but you still feel there is a 21st working group that should be a part of it that's not represented in those 20, it's also super easy to start a new working group, and we're happy to guide you through how you can do that. So yeah, come join us, engage, and be a part of it. If you're from Egypt, of course, you can be a part of the team on the ground organizing the Global Conference of Youth, but you don't need to be a part or to be in Egypt to be a part of the Global Conference of Youth team. For COP26 in itself, we had a team of 500 volunteers from across the world who made this conference happen. So anybody from anywhere can be a part of the Global Conference of Youth team and make this happen. I'm not entirely sure now because we'll have to see what COP26 is ending on, like what the negotiations look like. Did we really achieve to finish the Paris Agreement work program or the rule book, so to say? And if not, what does that mean? What do the implications look like? So I really don't know what is at stake, so to say, at COP27, but there is so much more to do. This presidency has set up so many different groups, friends of COP, friends of civil society, youth advisory groups, which have been one of groups which have not been there in the past. There's been no precedence of something like this. So I think it would be good to see how the next presidency can meaningfully work with youth constituencies to make this happen, and not just set up individual groups that have little or no connection to the mechanisms that are continuously existing for the past 10 years or so. So there's a lot of expectations in how youth are going to be a part of the process. There are a lot of expectations in terms of the meaningfulness of youth inclusion. But in terms of the COP in itself, I'm not entirely sure. Let's wait another week and a couple of more days to see how that looks like.
Thanks a lot, Heeta.
Thank you so much.